Salvete! Welcome to my National Latin Exam Mythology crash course. I'm Madeline Weiner, and you might know me from my videos about Roman history or my books. My first video on YouTube was a crash course for the history questions on the National Latin Exam, and I decided to try to help you out with the mythology too. I'm more of a history expert than a mythology expert, but you don't need to be an expert to get all the mythology questions on the NLE. I can't guarantee that this will be absolutely everything they'll ever talk about, but I'll get pretty darn close. I will also be omitting many pieces of stories and glossing over a lot of interesting detail in order to get everything you need in as little time as possible. So mythology lovers, please forgive me. I've put a link to a guided notes template in the video description below, so teachers or students print that out so you can take notes along with the video. If this helps you, let me know in the comments, and you can follow me and all my projects here on YouTube, or at MaddieWay on Instagram and TikTok. I'm going to break this into 3 parts. Part 1, which is this video, is just the gods and goddesses with some of their most important associated myths. If this is your first year in Latin, you can probably get away with just Part 1. However, if you're looking for a perfect score, some of what you need to get every single question is tucked away in the other videos. Part 2 is heroes and monsters, the Trojan War cycle, and the underworld. Parts 1 and 2 together are what you need for the intermediate exam, which most students take in Latin too. Part 3 is Italian deities, Ovid's metamorphoses, and mythological groups and creatures. If you're taking the intermediate reading comp or any of the advanced exams, make sure you watch all 3 parts. Alright, let's dive in with Part 1, the gods and goddesses. We're going to start with the king of the Titans, Saturn, or Kronos. Throughout the video I will use mostly Roman names, but sometimes use the Greek names second. The National Latin Exam defaults to Roman names, but the upper level tests often want you to know Greek names as well, and they sometimes sneak into the lower level tests too. So, Roman name Saturn, Greek name Kronos. Saturn took power by overthrowing his father Uranus, and he didn't want anyone doing the same to him, so he ate his children. Logical. He ate 5 children, but his wife Rhea didn't like him eating her babies. So when she had a 6th child, she gave Saturn a rock instead. He ate the rock and apparently didn't notice, and Rhea had the child raised in secret. This child grew up to be Jupiter, or Zeus, and came back to overthrow his father. First, he made Saturn sick to throw up his siblings. Then Jupiter and the gods had a war with Saturn and the Titans. The Titans lost because Jupiter made a deal with the Cyclopses to give him lightning bolts. Saturn ran away and hid in Latium in Italy for a while, where he became a god of agriculture and led a golden age, but eventually Jupiter found him and threw him into Tartarus in the underworld. Now we get to the first set of gods and goddesses to memorize. These are the original Olympians, the 6 siblings, 5 of whom were eaten by Saturn. They're called Olympians because they live at the top of Mount Olympus. There are 3 brothers, Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto. Easy to remember because they're all planets. Well, okay, not Pluto anymore, but you know what I mean. The 3 brothers drew lots after the war to see who would rule which realm. Jupiter got the sky, Neptune got the sea, and Pluto got the underworld. Then there are 3 sisters, Juno, Ceres, and Vesta. Let's take them one at a time. Jupiter, or Zeus in Greek, is king of the gods, and god of sky and lightning. His bird is the eagle, his tree is the oak. He has affairs with many people who are not his wife, and so he has children by many different mothers. I will go into most of these in more depth later, but here they are in one place. In general, if Jupiter has a child with an immortal woman, they become a god. If he has a child with a mortal, they become a demigod, a hero who is extraordinary but still mortal, still human. Neptune, or Poseidon, is god of the sea. He also causes earthquakes and invented horses. He carries a trident, a big pole with 3 pointy bits, which is a fisherman's tool. Pluto, or Hades, rules the underworld. He is not god of death, but he is king of the dead. Because he rules the land underground, he is also god of precious metals and minerals, and the other forms of wealth that mortals dig up from underground. He owns a 3-headed dog named Cerberus, who is guard dog of the underworld. The queen of the underworld is Proserpina, or Persephone, a daughter of Jupiter and Ceres, whom Pluto kidnapped. I will talk more about this myth when I get to Ceres. Juno, or Hera, is Jupiter's wife and queen of the gods, and the goddess of marriage. Her bird is the peacock. She is vengeful and often punishes Jupiter's lovers, though I hesitate to use the word lovers, since mythology buffs know that these are often more accurately called his victims. Ceres, or Demeter, is goddess of grain and agriculture. You can remember her name because the word cereal comes from Ceres. She was the mother of Proserpina, whom Pluto kidnapped to make his wife. When Proserpina disappeared, Ceres went into mourning and searched all over the world for her. Nothing would grow because the goddess of agriculture was in mourning. So Jupiter made a deal with Pluto. Proserpina would split her time between Earth and the underworld. She would stay down in the underworld for 6 months every year because she ate 6 pomegranate seeds, the food of the dead. When Proserpina is in the underworld, nothing grows, but for the 6 months she comes back home to Ceres, the world is fertile. This explains the seasons. Finally, there's Vesta, or Hestia, goddess of home and hearth, which means fireplace. A lot of modern people think it's silly to have a goddess just for fireplaces, but remember this is the ancient world. Your fireplace was not just a source of heat, it was where you got your light and how you cooked your food. In the world before electricity, the fireplace really was important enough to have a goddess. Vesta was the firstborn of the Olympians, meaning she was the first baby to be eaten by Saturn. In Rome, Vesta was worshipped by the 6 Vestal virgins, who kept a sacred flame always lit. So those are your first gods and goddesses, the original 6. Next we come to the gods and goddesses fathered by Jupiter, so we can think of these as the second generation of Olympians. Minerva, or Athena, is goddess of wisdom, war, and weaving. She was born fully formed out of Jupiter's head. Her mother was actually Jupiter's first wife, Metis. Jupiter found out that if Metis had a son, he would surpass his father, meaning that he would get overthrown just like he overthrew Saturn. So he ate Metis. Apparently it runs in the family. Then Minerva got born from his head. Minerva's bird is the owl, which is why owls are associated with wisdom. One of her famous stories is that a mortal woman named Arachne was bragging that she was the best weaver, better than Minerva herself. So Minerva challenged her to a weaving contest, and Arachne used her tapestry to insult the gods. So Minerva turned Arachne into a spider, hence the word arachnid. Mars, or Ares, is the god of war. He is actually the son of Jupiter and Juno, and it's sad how noteworthy it is that Jupiter actually had a child with his wife. Mars was the father of Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome. Diana, or Artemis, is the goddess of hunting and the moon. She and Apollo are the twin children of Jupiter and Leto, and they both use a bow and arrow. Diana is one of the 3 virgin goddesses. Diana, Minerva, and Vesta all remain unmarried and do not associate with men. One of her famous stories is that the hunter Actaeon saw her bathing, and for the crime of seeing her naked, she turned Actaeon into a deer and had him torn to pieces by his own hunting dogs. Apollo, whose name is the same in Latin and Greek, was the god of the sun, music, medicine and disease, poetry, and prophecy. A lot of students think of him as the god of miscellaneous, but that isn't really accurate. To the Greeks and Romans, these things were all linked, because they're high-minded things that require education and refinement. Apollo is Diana's twin, and uses a bow and arrow, and he is often shown as a young man with long hair and a lyre, which is a musical instrument. One important story is Phaeton, who was son of the sun god. Sometimes this was supposed to be Apollo, and other times there's a god of just the sun called Sol or Helios. In any case, Phaeton asked to drive the chariot that pulled the sun, and his father tried to talk him out of it. But Phaeton did it anyway. He couldn't control the horses, and caused all sorts of damage until Jupiter struck him out of the sky and killed him. You should also know the oracle at Delphi. This was the most important prophet of the ancient world, and of course associated with Apollo because he's god of prophecy. Delphi was a Greek island, and the temple of Apollo there was at the foot of Mount Parnassus, which was where Apollo killed a giant snake monster called the Python. Mercury, or Hermes, is the god of moving and traveling. He's the messenger of the gods, and the god of travelers, thieves, commerce, etc. He wears winged sandals and hat, and carries the caduceus, which is a staff intertwined with 2 snakes. On the day Mercury was born, he escaped his cradle and stole his brother Apollo's cattle. While he was hiding with them, he invented the lyre. When Apollo found him, he was so impressed with the lyre that he traded his cattle and his magic staff, the caduceus, for it. So that's how Apollo got the lyre and Mercury got the caduceus. Bacchus, or Dionysus, is the god of wine, drama, and revelry. He is the only god on this list who has a mortal mother, a woman named Semele. Juno tricked her into making Jupiter reveal his true form to her, which killed her. Jupiter took the unborn Bacchus and sewed him into his thigh, then gave birth to Bacchus himself. Since he was born from Jupiter instead of Semele, he wound up a full god. Bacchus granted a wish to King Midas, who wanted everything he touched turned into gold. That's one of those be careful what you wish for things, because everything he touches turning into gold wasn't so good when he wanted to eat food or hug his daughter, and Bacchus took the gift back away when he asked. Finally, Vulcan, or Hephaestus, is the blacksmith god of fire and forges. He is definitely the son of Juno, and maybe Jupiter too. In some versions, Juno made him on her own, much as Jupiter gave birth to Minerva alone. Vulcan made weapons and other things for the gods with the help of the Cyclopses in his forge under Mount Etna, a volcano on Sicily. The word volcano comes from Vulcan's name. Those are the important divine children of Jupiter: Minerva, Mars, Diana, Apollo, Mercury, Bacchus, and Vulcan. I have 3 more divinities to mention before I end part 1. All 3 come from the age of Titans, but remain important even after the war that overthrew Saturn. Venus, or Aphrodite, is the goddess of love and beauty. Her bird is the dove, and her tree is the myrtle. Though she is usually counted as one of the Olympians, Venus was born earlier. She was born from sea foam after Saturn wounded Uranus. She is the mother of Cupid, or Eros, the mischievous boy who shoots arrows of love at people. Venus is married to Vulcan, but carries on an affair with Mars. Prometheus is a Titan and culture hero. In some versions he created mankind, and in all versions he was their champion. He stole fire for humans when the gods tried to keep it from us. For this he was punished. Jupiter chained him to a rock, and every day eagles came to eat out his liver, which of course kept growing back because Prometheus is immortal. After the theft of fire, Jupiter also punished mankind by giving them the first woman, Pandora. She opened Pandora's box, which was actually a jar, and released all the evils into the world. Then Prometheus's son Deucalion married Pandora's daughter Pyrrha. Jupiter sent a big flood to destroy mankind, and Deucalion and Pyrrha were the only survivors. They threw stones over their shoulders, which turned into people and repopulated the world. Finally, there's the Titan Atlas. His job is to hold up the sky. Without him, the sky would fall down and crush us all. He is often shown in modern stuff holding up the Earth, but that's not really right. Atlas stands on the Earth and holds the sky. There's a mountain range in North Africa called the Atlas Mountains, after him. Now I said that first-year Latin students could probably stop after Part 1 if they're not aiming at perfect scores. One warning before you leave. Some of the important mythology for your test is covered in my video about Roman history. The Aeneas story and the Romulus' founding of Rome are in that weird place between mythology and history, so make sure you watch the history video to get that story too. That's it for Part 1. First-year students, good luck studying. Everyone else, I'll see you in the next video.